How's it going? This is Cajun, and I've been asked to make a really quick video about how I make my slow cooker spaghetti sauce. It is really, really easy, especially if you don't have a lot of time on your hands, just want to really make something together real quick. One of my favorites, really delicious sauce. But yeah, I'll show you the steps. It's really, really quick, really easy, and well, I mean, it's not quick, it's going in a slow cooker, but the preparation is easy. And then you can, honestly, let it sit for like 6, 10 hours, doesn't matter. But I'm just going to chop together some really quick video clips of me doing stuff, show you exactly what to do, and that's it, done. Should hopefully not be too long. I do have a slight benefit, as this is my garden. There are lots and lots of herbs here, but I'm going to focus mostly on the basil and stuff like that, which is way up here. But isn't it awesome? So here's the herbs first. So I have some basil, fresh from my garden, some bay leaves too. They're usually pretty easy to come by. Fresh oregano, also from my garden, awesome. Get some dried oregano too, because they do taste different, and you will want to put them both in. I like to add a little bit of Cajun seasoning as well, just for a little bit of extra flavor. This blend can usually be found at any grocery store. Chili flakes, very important. Black pepper, freshly ground if you can. Salt, kosher salt works best, but really any salt will do. Regular white sugar, and I'll show you that at the end, and then of course we have some cinnamon. As far as gross vegetables go, an onion, of course. Onions really add flavor to everything. Even if you don't like onions, just chop it up real small. Garlic, if you have freshly pressed garlic, that's awesome. If you just have stuff from the store, that's fine. As long as it's like this kind of chunky looking garlic stuff, that'll do fine. You can also add things like bell peppers. I'm going to put half a bell pepper in just because I like the flavor. But you don't, it's not necessary. It's just like a little bit of extra crunch. You also want to get some tomato stuff because, you know, tomato sauce, right? Now, your best choice is to get some nice high-quality whole tomatoes. Trust me, they will just squish down into nothingness. You won't even notice the giant lumpiness. But you can also break them up, blend them up, squish them up all you want. If you can't find those, stewed tomatoes, usually also really cheap. Stewed tomatoes work really nicely. And if you can't find any of those for some reason, just crushed tomatoes will work fine. I'm going to use 2 cans, so I am going to actually use these 2. I would also suggest getting 1 or 2 cans of tomato paste. It really depends on how thick you want it. Now, I'm sure all of you are asking, well, Cajun, you grew tomatoes. How come you're not using fresh garden tomatoes in your pasta today? Well, that's because I have actually eaten most of them. And most of the varieties I have aren't really good for sauces. I do have a few, though, so I'm going to throw those in anyway. The best ones are called paste tomatoes, and they can come in many different varieties. But basically all you do is you get boiling water, and you drop one in, and then you wait 30 seconds. Alright, after about 30 seconds or so, magic of television, you take the tomato out and you drop it into a cold water bath, so ice preferably, and then you just let that sit for about another 30 seconds. After about 30 seconds of them being in the water, they're no longer hot, and the peels actually just slide right off. I can't really do this with 2 hands, but you can see how like easily these peels are just coming off. So just use both hands, scrape the peels off, and then you take your tomato and actually just squeeze it to get a lot of the seeds and juices out over a sink, and then just throw that directly in the crock pot. And lastly, cheese. It's not super important. You don't have to put it in. Cheese just adds a little bit of flavor. You probably want about, I'd say like half this block if you want to use Asiago or Parmesan. Alternatively, if you want to use the pre-grated Parmesan, works just fine, tastes just as good. Well, maybe not as good, but anyway, it works just as fine. Put maybe, I'm going to say 4 tablespoons worth in there. The recipe also calls for 1 pound of beef, approximately. I mean, you can use a little more, a little less. You want to cook the beef first. You want to brown it. So as you can see, I've actually browned this up. As you do the browning of the beef, just add a little bit of salt to it, maybe just like a pinch or 2 of salt over the top. It just draws a little bit of the extra juices and fats out. And if you get too much on the bottom, like it gets really greasy down there, you can drain it off. But really, this is some pretty lean beef, so you're not going to see too much of it. I would recommend using lean beef for this. You can use medium. Medium will work too. You just will probably have to drain it a bit. You do not want to use extra lean. It'll get way too dry, and extra lean is just kind of gross. Start dicing up your veggies. I'd start with the onions because you're going to need them pretty much as soon as the beef is browned. So just dice these, put them aside. If you do want to do a pepper, dice the pepper up too. Alright, so now that the beef is all done, nice and sizzling and delicious, we're going to bring it over here and we're going to throw it right into the awaiting crock pot. Okay, so I mean, if it gets a little bit cool while it's waiting, that's fine. We're going to be reheating this whole thing anyway. Get a little bit of stuff on the bottom of the plate, that's fine. Just scrape that in there, but don't wash the bowl out. I'll show you why. Now that pan is full of flavor. It's got a little bit of beef grease left on it and all that delicious stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take the onions, and we are going to put the onions in here. And this is a process they like to call deglazing, sort of. You're using the onions as a liquid to sort of deglaze the flavors off the edges of that pan. It also helps to caramelize the onions, which makes the onions delicious. Alright, when you're caramelizing onions, it's important to put a little bit of salt in. It helps to draw out some of the liquid. You also don't want to cook them too much. You don't want to burn them. If you have too hot of a pan, they will actually not caramelize as much as they will actually just dry up and burn. If the pan is a little bit too hot, just add a little bit of water, like that, and then you just mix it around, stew it just a little bit. It'll actually help prevent them from burning. I'm just doing it to show you because it looks nice. Alright, there's a tomato from before. Now, you also want to crush the tomato in your hand. That's probably a good thing. But here's the peppers and the onions all mixed together. I'm just going to throw those on top. And then I'm going to get the rest of those tomatoes put in. These are San Marzano tomatoes. They've been canned, so they're stewed, but they are whole. So you want to actually take them, and you want to bring them over. As you see, I actually had a lot more tomatoes than I thought. But anyway, you want to take them and you want to kind of crush them in. Into your sauce. I'd obviously wash your hands first, but I like to do that. It's kind of gross, it's kind of squishy, but it gets you the pretty much best consistency. These will all squish down anyway. If you want to crush them first, you can, but this is just kind of fun. San Marzano tomatoes also come with like kind of this paste in the bottom. I would add that. If it's nice and thick like that, go ahead and put that in. If it's really thin and runny and gross, don't add that, because it's going to add too much liquid. Alright, so next I would normally add my stewed tomatoes now, but I'll show you. The stewed tomatoes actually come in kind of a juice, and you'll see that that's really, really thin. So you actually want to drain a lot of that juice out first. You don't really want that in your soup, in your spaghetti, or it'll turn to soup. So now I'm just going to add the stewed tomatoes in, and as you see, they're kind of semi-whole. They're kind of like half tomatoes. They're not as big as San Marzanos, so you want to just maybe give them a quick little smashing down. Cooking them, the slow cooking will actually break these tomatoes down a lot too. When you pour all this stuff in, you might as well turn your slow cooker on, get it warmed up. This process does take a while. Now you also notice that my sauce is a little bit runny, so that's what the cans of tomato paste are for. If it's too runny, add another can of tomato paste. If you notice it's way too thick, save that juice from the stewed tomatoes and just add a little bit of it back in. I'm not going to right now. Also, this makes a half-decent tomato soup. You actually really just heat this up, and it tastes kind of like canned tomato soup. So there you go. Next, we'll add all of the seasoning. But first, let's cut it down into more manageable sizes. It's magic! So the basil, I've chopped it up into tiny little bits and pieces. Some people tear it, you can chop it, whatever. It's pretty much going to dissolve into nothingness. That's all the oregano those little sprigs got. I want about double that amount of dried oregano, so I put about 2 tablespoons of dried oregano in, about a tablespoon of chili flakes. I have about a teaspoon or so of black pepper. If you like more, put more in. If you don't like spicy black pepper, don't put that much in. Maybe put half a teaspoon. And about half a tablespoon or like 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. You don't want to put too much cinnamon in because you can way overpower it, and then the whole thing just tastes like cinnamon. So when in doubt, use less cinnamon, maybe like a tablespoon or a teaspoon, and a few little bay leaves. Anyway, I'm going to throw this in now. So all the ingredients are in there. They look kind of messy. I'm also going to put about 2 tablespoons of the Cajun seasoning in there, maybe 1.5 tablespoon. And I also want some salt. Salt is very important because the tomatoes are extremely sweet. Probably an additional tablespoon or so of salt. I know it sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. Again, if you're trying to cut back on salt because you're crazy and you think that actually does something to your diet, which it doesn't, then maybe put in like some half salt or something like that. Alright, this was almost tragic. I almost forgot to put garlic in. It usually calls for about 4-ish cloves of garlic, which I say is about, it's like 2 cloves per tablespoon, so I'm going to put approximately 2 tablespoons in. I know it might seem like a lot, but it really isn't. They will absorb so much flavors. You can see everything's kind of mixed around in there. It looks really dark and weird, but that's just the camera. Trust me, it looks normal. I have added 1 can of tomato paste. You can see it still looks a little bit loose. You still see some like sort of liquid in there. So I might actually add a 2nd can of tomato paste. You don't want to be too thick at this, or too thin, sorry, at this point, because it will thin up more than this. As it cooks, the tomatoes will break down, they'll release more juices, and it's actually going to come apart a little more. So I'm going to add that 2nd can of tomato paste. So the 2nd can of tomato paste helped. It's you can barely see any liquids in the bottom and stuff like that. I know it looks really weird. This camera makes it look really dark. Now that everything's added, you want to put your cheese in sort of last here. So I'm just going to pour this on top. Some people probably don't like to put cheese in while they're baking it. I find if it's a dry cheese like Asiago or Parmesan, it doesn't melt really, it just kind of mixes in. It's going to get a little bit creamier than normal bolognese will get, and I also put way too much in, but I also like creamy sauce, so shut up. All right, and I mean, that's pretty much it. It's now in there. You pretty much just leave your crock pot. If you want it within maybe 2 hours, put your crock pot on high, if it has a high setting. Usually they have like high, low, and warm. Some just have low and high. Anyway, the highest setting, leave it on that for, I'd say about 2 hours, and it'll be ready around then. If you want a much slower one, you want to do it throughout the day, just set it on low, and I'd say leave it for about 6 hours at least, and it should be fine. You can leave it all the way up to maybe about 10 hours. I would try and get to it and stir it once or twice if you're going to leave it that long, just to prevent some stuff from sticking from the edges and stuff like that. But 6 hours, it should be fine. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Now just pop the lid on and lock it into place if you got one of the ones that locks. Yeah. Now you might be asking, now Cajun, where does the sugar come into play? You brought the sugar out. Well, I'm not going to show you now because I don't want to wait 6 hours and then put the sugar in and bring my camera out again. I just want to upload this video. Half hour before you're going to serve it, whether you do it on high or whether you do it on low, doesn't matter which one. Half hour before you serve it, take 1 tablespoon of sugar and pour it on the top, sprinkle it like on top, mix it around, close the lid, and then leave it on whatever temperature you had it. So you had it on low, leave it on low. If you had it on high, leave it on high. Either way, the point is 1/2 hour before you're going to serve it. You do not want to put this in now, because what will happen is the sugar will actually caramelize, and you'll get this weird caramel flavor. And it's not bad, but it's not really a flavor that should be in pasta. Some people ask, why do you add sugar? Trust me, it brings out the flavor of the tomatoes, it brings out the flavor of the basil, the oregano, it just pulls everything together. Without it, it's still delicious, but it just adds that little bit of So, yeah, this has been Cajun. I hope you enjoyed. I hope this was informative. I'm not going to show you how to make homemade pasta because that's just way too messy and it requires more than one hand. So, yeah, if you like this, let me know. I hope you enjoyed. Take it easy.